Thank you for the presentation so far, which I've enjoyed and learned from already. So thank you for that. And I think maybe we'll contribute to the debate too. In the so what I'm going to do in the time we have available is I'm going to, in a sense, talk over in a way in which it will help you read the paper if you haven't read it so far, and use the slides if you want to use those in the future, and consider the arguments that we're building and the work that we're building. Basically, this is funded originally by UK government, a UK government project, and it's myself at Loughborough University and Ali at the esteemed University of Aberdeen in Scotland. So I'm in England and he's in Scotland, working together on a problem, as you see represented on the screen here, which is a digitization and urban governance, and the city as a reflection of its data infrastructure. So to unpack that a little bit, as I go through, what we're really looking at is the governance implications of smart cities. So the governance implications of smart cities, and if that sounds a little bit specific, I'm going to argue that it's quite a general problem, an increasingly general problem. And so the governance implications of smartness, of smart data in the city is quite a general problem. And I'm also going to present a framework for understanding the governance implications of smart cities. So the ultimate outcome of this work is a framework, and you will pick up some of that today, not everything, but we will certainly give you an impression of the way in which the thinking and the research is going. At the heart of all of this is a kind of combination of technological drivers, and those technological drivers which are kind of playing into an urban environment, meeting a set of alternative governance modes which are desired by a given urban environment for some specific reasons. So, you know, again, as you go through, these things will become a little bit clearer, but all we'll be doing in this initial presentation is giving you a kind of an overview, a way in which you can maybe understand and interpret the paper and use with the paper, and indeed the ongoing work that we are building here. So not much more than an overview, as I say. Look out for the kind of the key question that we're addressing here, which is to get at this governance implications of smart cities and to present a framework for helping people to deal with the implications there. And in order to do that, I'm going to take a kind of a step a little bit outwards in terms of the frame, and just to remind all of us in a way, what an extraordinary time we are living through, as evidenced by our modes of communication today, if you like. But I think that a good starting point for all consideration of smart cities and smartness in the urban environment is to consider digitization of the economy, digitization of societies. And so drawing down a number of sources here, which you see on screen here, just mentioning them as I pass through, but Brynjolfs and McAfee, Goldfarb and Tucker, the papers by Levin and Nordhaus and so on. There's this kind of body of work which is taking a view of the digital economy and understanding the economic forces which are driving it forward. But I think maybe we should highlight the first point, and to say that this digitization process is macro in scale. This is not confined to one sector. This digitization of the economy is sweeping through and building implications across many sectors in many aspects of all of us, our daily lives. You know, these are the kinds of things that we can discuss earnestly and with some seriousness, because not only is it a kind of theoretical phenomenon, but it's affecting us ourselves too. Just as data becomes more central to life, and data becomes more central to urban life in particular. So what Ali and myself are doing is putting data really at the center of this governance problem, and seeing the manifestation of the governance problem as originating from the properties of data, and also the kind of the history of any given, and the kind of vision and culture of any given urban environment in which this data is manifest. So we're kind of being data driven, but then very quickly coming off this data-driven kind of hook and beginning to see its interpretation in a kind of an urban environment as being key. And this will become very clear in a moment or two if it seems a little bit you know, a little bit speculative at this early stage, but it will become very clear what we are beginning to do. But I want you to understand initially, at least, that data is now, in a sense, ordinarily part of the public realm. It's a public good. It's not something that is held in any given institutional framework, not necessarily the property of the government, not necessarily the property of large platform firms, not necessarily the property of the urban populace and so on, but maybe a manifestation of ownerships across all of these different bodies. And how we sort out ownership questions is, of course, central to our kind of governance quest, our governance question. So at least up to now, we understand that data is central. Data is central to how this work is being built, but data is central to, in a sense, how we begin to understand the public realm, and we're seeing data as this public good. So the data to the smart city, I'm going to introduce sort of twice and do it kind of quickly, but the smart city, you know, easy to sort of unpack it and see it as a kind of a new phenomenon, that's arriving in certain geographical areas, rather than seeing it as a kind of an embedded movement within multiple urban areas. And again, Ali and myself, our work is very much in that second position. The smart city is not something that is built new and designated as such over there, you know, different to a traditional city, but smartness is a kind of movement within our kind of global urban infrastructure as we are encountering it. So I'll just take you through these points a little bit, then cap off as we come towards a conclusion. So I think one way which I can make this point, though, is with this diagram here. So we're looking from clockwise from the this in this kind of pictorial here. If you read it clockwise, I'm not sure if that works in Australia, but I think it's probably the same. Is that we've got NEOM, which is the Saudi Arabian, you know, urban metropolis vision, which is on the top left. Then myself and Ali are both kind of Mancunians in some ways. That's Manchester, England in the snow as we follow through clockwise. Then Songdo in South Korea down at the bottom. And then the picture we have is of Mayor Ada Colau of Barcelona. And the point here is that all of these would claim to have kind of smart initiatives, to, in a sense, very different contexts, but all claiming to have smartness at the center, having data at the center. So trying to work out what is meant by this and what the implications are of this is, in a sense, fundamental to the work we're doing. So NEOM is a smart city, you know, a plan, a visionary city, not yet constructed, but to be technological all the way through. Manchester, a very traditional city, an old urban environment, industrial at its initial heritage and so on and so forth, but which is trying to become smart. Songdo, more like NEOM, but already manifest and already existing. And the point about Ada Colau is that she very famously kind of moved the kind of smartness and data-driven initiatives in Barcelona. She moved them from being, if you like, globalization and technological in their character to being community and activist in their character. And she took smartness in Barcelona, the idea of a data-driven city, and moved it from being about the global and the technological to being much more focused on the communal and the activist, but still using data at the core of city governance. So a few minutes to go through a few more points, but you see where we take the idea of a smart city. We argue that the concept of a smart city promotes a new form of arrangement in the management of urban affairs, and it's almost anywhere in which they are prepared to engage with the significance of data. And central to the existence of a smart city is its data. The concept of a smart city elevates and emphasizes the role of data so that it is key to the decision structures, power relations, economic incentives, stakeholder participation, and operational behavior of the city. Any form of governance of the city itself is eventually a question of how the data is institutionalized. Let me make one or two more points about this, because I think one area of focus in the term we use is this idea of citizen-enabled urban data. So this is some of the newness that we're seeing in the kind of in the idea of data in the urban environment. Citizen-enabled urban data, what is meant by this? Well, this is all the things that we know about, isn't it? This is massive in scale, unstructured, text, voice, photo, video, the kinds of things that are gathered off smartphones, off sensors, off cars, off dash cams, helmet cams, and so on and so forth. You know, the sensors in your smartphone, the accelerometer in the smartphone, and much of this data is then increasingly used to focus on the citizenry, the people themselves. So it might be gathered by the people, sometimes for the people, and on other occasions it might be gathered by institutions or other commercial actors acting in some sort of relation to the people. But this is one of the new phenomena of all of our lives. This has grown up in our lifetimes. And I think the third point I should emphasize before I begin to move through a couple of minutes with the presentation. But the third point I think we should emphasize here is that data is not entirely acquired nor managed by any single source, but comes from multiple sources. It's on your smartphone, it's in your car, it's in the government sensors, it's in the government cameras, it's in the CCTV of the local shop, it's in the, you know, you get the impression, the community group and what they're doing, the maker society, and so on and so forth. So making sense of this new world of data is crucial to making sense of governance in the city in the 21st century. And what you will see in the paper, which I won't cover now, but I will just mention as we go through, is that we have a way we have a framework which helps us to understand the implications, the governance implications of the smart cities. And our framework basically brings together technological drivers on the one hand, being presented here. We have a model for technological drivers, fairly sophisticated analysis of what the technological drivers are behind bringing data into the urban environment. And over on another side, we have a kind of governance set of frameworks, a governance typology represented here on this slide. And you'll see this in the paper, that we're basically saying, well, to make sense of this, we need to look at the technological drivers and marry them to a kind of governance typology and to what's being intended. This ultimately manifests as what we call the house model, this framework here. And the important thing about the framework is basically you're seeing this marriage here, technological drivers in the center over here, data governance modes over here. And what you're basically seeing is that it's all embedded in a context. So the context of Manchester is very different to the context of Songdo, different again to the context of Neom, different to the context of Barcelona, different to the context of Toronto, for example, Johannesburg, and so on. And it's bringing these general technological drivers, these general data governance modes into life in some kind of municipal reality is where we go with our contribution in terms of the house model framework. So conscious of time, you know, you will, as I say, I'm very happy to make these slides available, and of course you have the paper. But I hope that you begin, you know, hope this introduction serves some purpose in helping you to begin to understand how these things come together. As I put here on this just prior slide, the context is being driven by existing governance frameworks and expectations in the city. History, culture, politics is driving the context in which we are, say, using the citizen-enabled urban data to some purpose. And the purpose might be what we want to do with it in terms of its governance mode. And that framework for making sense of this complexity is the heart of our contribution. So to conclude, the journey to the planning of smart city initiatives starts with envisioning the emerging forms of a city. How we are going to develop Barcelona, how we are going to develop Manchester or Neom in Saudi Arabia, and its governance, given the choice of urban data arrangement. Smart city initiatives have only come into existence as a result of big data technologies. So very much to myself and Ali, we see data as the central contribution and the central phenomenon here. And these, many characteristics which we know about, but the potential for bundling this data and seeing intelligence and maybe prediction and machine learning in the future is key to how we use urban data. And the final outcome of a smart city initiative is determined by the city's history and its vision for the future. So to make sense of the smart city in Manchester, we have to understand that history and its vision for the future, and then the technology within it. And this kind of thinking is what we are engaged in. Right, so that's me done, I think. Certainly I've run out of time, but could talk all day, Cindy. So I think I better cut it.